Counting the seconds now. Breathe. Okay, there's nobody here. Paula, are you ready? Okay, guys ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Gigi's here. Yay. Okay, welcome to the February 16th, 2017 Downtown Design Review Committee meeting. First item is roll call.
Betsy Brunstetter.
Present.
Gigi Faulkner.
Present.
Charles Ainsworth. Corey Bates. Present. Nathaniel Harding. Connie Scothorn. Present. Danielle Theriault. Present. You have a quorum.
Okay, we have one continuance request. Is there any issue with that? Do we have to vote on it? Yeah. Nathaniel just...
Yes, approval of the minute.
Nathaniel just arrived. Hope everybody has been able to read the minutes. Do we have a motion and a second on that, please?
Move to approve the minutes.
Okay, we have no cases withdrawn.
Wait.
Oh, all in favor? I'm moving pretty fast. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Second? Okay, good. Any opposed? Okay, no cases withdrawn. Continuance request.
It was Danielle. And yeah, you do need to
Vote on the
continuance request.
So we have an item on the continuance request docket.
I move to continue it to the April 20th meeting.
Okay,
Second.
that was Corey and Danielle. Okay, I'm slowing down. Here I go. We have an all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the continuance request is approved. We've got one item on the consent docket. It is a mural. It's been approved by the Arts Commission. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the application on the basis that it complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District Zoning Ordinance as referenced in Section C of the staff report.
He's so good at that. Second?
Second.
That was Danielle. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent docket passes. Items for individual consideration. There is a 701 West Sheridan. Is the applicant present?
Here I am, Melody Garneau for Paramount.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You might recall, it's been a few months. This was before you. And the direction that was given to the applicant was to come back with a way to take some of the paint, if I remember correctly, off the building. The applicant has provided correspondence from an artist, and it's included in your packet, Mr. Mead, with his recommendation. And so I don't know if you want me to start at the beginning or we can just go from where we are here, which, as you might recall, this building had been previously painted, and let me get to, you can see it looks like the building has stripes. And that's because at one point, metal was wrapped around the windows. There were two bands of metal. And then in between that, it was painted a gray. And so when the metal was wrapped around the windows, the sills were actually busted off. If you get up close, you can see where the bricks were busted. And so when the metal was removed and the paint was removed, we end up with what looks like stripe. But it uncovered a lot of really nice detailing in the brick. And so what you can see, and I was able to do the comparison because the windows on Sheridan have not been paint around it, so you can actually see the detailing in the brick around the windows. And so I have some comparisons in here of windows that have not been painted versus windows that have been, so you can actually see how some of the paint, depending on the color, obscures the detailing. And there's two different styles of windows. One is the arch ones that you see here, and the other is the square ones that have different brick detailing, but you can also see the impact for the paint around that shape as well. This one that I'm showing now actually has more of the darker paint, so it's hard to see that. And this just showing you brick that hasn't been painted versus brick that has been painted. One of the, let me just show you what the correspondence, this is what the correspondence looks like from Mr. Mead, just for references. And what I will, staff continues to have concerns about the painting of this building. The downtown regulations contain several sections that address this. Obviously, one is signage is intended to attract attention, so obviously this is attracting attention. And it should work with the building, not be detrimental to the building, and obscuring details is a concern. The Arts Commission, and I included their information in your packet as well, when they voted on this, they actually did not support it because they recognized the subject matter was appropriate, but the fact that it had been done before it was approved is not in keeping with their guidelines, so they did not recommend this mural. I don't know if that's happened.
I don't know if it came out in this meeting or in subsequent conversation, but they actually really like the
Well, that's why I said that they said the subject matter was totally appropriate at that location. However, it's not in keeping
well
with the guidelines.
executed is what they told me, so.
But since it was not in keeping with their guidelines, they did not support.
But they did approve it, as I understand. Is that right?
I believe they took no action.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It didn't meet their, it didn't meet their process and description.
Okay, so they wanted to,
mural. So
but
they were
because I didn't
unable-
apply ahead of time, they couldn't,
Exactly.
because of their, I
Right,
got you,
yes,
okay.
but they did make
Fair enough.
favorable comments,
Yes,
but
they
they
did.
couldn't
Fair enough.
officially act on it.
They did.
So what does can you describe what the expert says that he would do?
Well, you can see that this was before I bought the building, that it was painted and so forth.
Right.
That's what this stripe is all about. Someone used some chemicals and also some power washing to remove that old paint, which of course now makes there's still paint on there. It was a gray, kind of a silver thing, so it's still in the brick. And many of the bricks were damaged, even not just the windowsills when they ripped off the metal, but the bricks, the rest of the bricks, because of the power washing and the crumbling and the age of the bricks. So the recommendation is they would probably be more detrimental to the paint, to the bricks, for a second time to be, power washed and scraped. And recognizing, I understand that I didn't get this approved ahead of time, and that is all on me. It was a very fast thing for this guy from New Zealand who was here and did them both at the same time. So, whatever consequences for that, I'm happy to take them. But the mural itself, I don't think it detracts from the building. I don't think even the small architectural detail that there's concern about on the sills of the upper windows or the one side of the upper windows. I don't think any of this detracts. I can tell you that I have more people come by that building and the film district since it's been there than they did before. It was a very nondescript square building that hardly was noticed. But the mural has drawn a lot of attention. I can't tell you how many times we get photographs of this now. And I'm also in discussion, partly because of the murals, with the new Oklahoma Pop Culture Museum about putting their satellite film spot in here, the one that they're building in Tulsa. And so hopefully that will bring even more attention to Film Row. Additionally, I think part of the problem was the sign, where the concern was that we painted over the ghost sign, what was left of it anyway, much of which had been obscured when they used the chemical wash and the power wash on it. I would also say that only half of it was even still barely visible, and that wasn't the only sign that had been painted there. They did that in one script, and they also had another one that had the, you might recognize, Paramount's mountain with the blue backdrop and so forth, was on there at one time. So it's not the first time it's been painted over. And I realized that was, I don't know when that was put there, probably in the 40s. But this will be here for a while too, so that will be part of its history, hopefully. And hopefully I'll have the building for a long time. And I'm trying to bring attention to the film aspect of this district, since it's called that, and that's about the only way to do it, is to highlight that kind of thing. So I don't think that it's deterring from the building in any way. I don't think the brick has been irreparably harmed by the paint on it, and it doesn't obscure very much of it. I would be willing, if I had to remove the paint from the top row on the sides, but if I tried to remove any from the other windows, it would be right in the middle of some of Woody Guthrie and part of Charlie Christian and several. It wouldn't really look much like a mural after that. So I don't see why that is really detracting from this building or the architecture of it.
And I'm sorry that these are so far apart, but the Go sign that she was just referring to, that actually was here, is where that sign was. And as some of you know, because we actually have regulations that talk about it, the intent is not to recreate the Go sign, but just to keep them. And so having it faded like it was is actually part of the character of that sign. And so that's the part that you can see that's left of it is right here on her forehead. But the rest of it went over the
Well, there you
slide.
go, right on Joan's forehead. Perfect. I'm still, I don't see the issue. I understand, believe me, retaining the heritage as best you can. That's why we've been so careful with the inside. We haven't changed the outside. Outside of these murals, we have made every attempt to replace everything with something either replicated or if we could find originals. And keeping it even for the purpose it was built, with still having the screening room in it. So I'm certainly not, I mean, I understand the point, but if it's barely recognizable, just having paint up there for having paint's sake because it's old paint doesn't necessarily mean that we're retaining any heritage of it. If it becomes that no one can even tell what it was for, I don't see that. I mean, I'd love to have been able to restore it or at least bring out what was left, but it doesn't seem to have been the case, so.
Okay. I would say that if this were proposed to us and it wasn't on the building, I may have made some changes to it to where it didn't obscure some of the brick detail, but I would have approved it even if it hadn't been there. So, with that said, do we have any questions or comments from the other committee members?
I would not have approved it if this was submitted in as is, as it's been painted right now. If this was submitted in, in the correct process of proposing it beforehand, I do believe the way it's laid out right now does detract from the existing architectural detailing. I do believe that there's clear guidelines in relation to ghost signs, and I strongly believe that while I would not approve this mural, that's not to say I wouldn't approve a mural that respected both the architectural detailing of the building, the existing ghost sign. I think the kind of attraction that you're talking about and promoting the building could still occur in a solution that doesn't detract from the existing condition or go against the guidelines of the district. So if this was submitted prior to being painted as it is, I would not approve it.
Okay.
I agree with Corey on this one. I mean, when I agree, it would be a nondescript rectangular building had it not been for these window detailings, which is the exact thing that we're covering with the mural. So I do like the mural, and I kind of agree the same thing. Had it just been modified with respect to the historic nature of the building, I think it would have been just fine. But as is, to me, it's very clear that it is not following the guidelines that we have.
Okay. Anybody else?
I actually do have a question. What happens if this gets denied? What is the consequence?
They'll have to take it off.
What was that?
They'll have to take it off or go to the Board of Adjustment, which is, the issue is then they'll have to remove more paint from the existing brick that is already in peril.
Or they could come
That's-
back with an alternative proposal on how to modify the mural.
Which is what we went through
Yeah,
before.
which was discussed last time.
Well, I would suggest if the paint, if everything proceeds and the paint is to be removed, that it's done carefully, and if any brick is deteriorated in the process, that brick be repaired or replaced to match.
Well, I must say I'm really confused about this one. I think the mural is just gorgeous, and I would have approved it had it been done the way it was supposed to have been done. But it's my understanding from reading all this stuff that removal of the mural will do more damage to the brick than is already there. Is that right?
Correct.
I would say potentially, but not definitely.
It sounds like, I just went to a restoration, like a exterior restoration seminar yesterday, which is, was totally random. But it sounds like from what I've heard and read about how the paint was originally removed, it was done correctly. It's an old building that has had paint on it for a long period of time. And so replacing the brick that is damaged sounds great, but the practicality of it is probably not as easy as you might think. I don't know.
I would like to add to that in that, there's a difference in the kinds of bricks that are often used. And I'm sure you all know, sometimes it's not the best of bricks. So the removal, that's why some of this is crumbled, obviously, and that would be my concern, especially if you see the windowsills. We already have to replace all of those, which is some of the detail that was removed before. So it would be quite disturbing that if a lot of that brick started to crumble and flake because of any removal process. Even the windowsills are going to be an issue.
Anything else?
Well, and I was going to say that the thing that bothers me about this is that they didn't get approval and they did it, and now they could potentially get away with it. Well, it'd be really easy for the next person to do a mural that doesn't think they'll get it approved, just we'll do it, and then we'll see if we get away with it. That's kind of what really kind of...
Yeah, we're discussing this, in relation to, the reason to let it stay is because of the condition of the brick and the potential of what it could do to the brick. But in theory, we're supposed to be reviewing this as if it's not already up there. And in that regard, that's where I have my position that as it is designed, I would not approve it.
And what would you have me do differently if it weren't on there? What would you rather see? Just no paint on the sills, the lintels, whatever? Well, it's not lintels, but the signs, is that the concern?
Yeah, the concealing of the detailing around the windows is a concern. The existence of the go sign that was there, I think that the guidelines clearly call for maintaining go signs, and that go sign could have been incorporated into a mural design that celebrates both the history of the building and the current use. So in that regard, mainly the window detailing and the go sign.
Corey,
Go ahead, Nathaniel.
I agree with what you're saying, as far as how this should be viewed. And, I even mostly agree with your conclusion, but I'm just kind of wondering if there is room, considering just where this is at this point, is there essentially a compromise where you say, well, if you were to change this now, if you were to move it from this brick and this around this window, and would that kind of get at the attempt of restoring some of that architectural element, recognizing this is where we are at this point?
Yes, and that was the conclusion we came to the first time we saw this, where when they came back, they would come back with a plan to modify the mural, and they haven't done that today. So
I'm sorry, I did. I said I would be willing to take the paint off the sides of the windows, that your concern is, with reference to the detail on the the bottom edges, for example, on the second story, where you can see like on Charlie Christian on that side, yeah. And those, I'm perfectly happy to have someone try to get it off without, power washing and just breaking the bricks. But all of the places where where the detail is the concern, I'm happy to do that.
So was
Okay,
this,
that's.
So my understanding is the concern is the detail around the windows, not necessarily the rest of it. And I'd be willing to do that.
Yeah, I think, Melody is affirming that now in the materials. The case you
That's
made
true.
in the letter
I
was that you
apologize. That's
wouldn't
true.
remove any of it.
yeah, and that's the confusion, is the one thing we have is a letter saying why it can't be done, and as opposed to a plan saying what, because I think, I know you summarized it earlier, but we continued it last time. Was that technically what we did? So it's almost like we need to just essentially force the issue, deny it, and say, try again, essentially. Don't come back with a letter saying why you can't do it, deny it and say, try,
But you
come
could
back with
also,
something
you
different.
could also approve it with conditions, and like staff could, we could mark up on the picture what gets. That might
Right
be
now,
the
it's kind of
quickest.
hand waving as far as where it's being removed, where do we draw the line? I think we need some kind of,
Or we could bring back a diagram to the committee, or staff could
Right.
review that diagram.
Yes, and I'm happy and then have someone that I trust that will take it off, and if you put a date on it and say it has to be removed by X day, I'm fine with that as well, after I see the places and how long it will take them to do it, obviously, but that's fine with me.
I got to say, this building has really come a long way, and I know you probably are aware of that, but it was really in bad shape and before the restoration started, and I realize that what you've done doesn't meet the ordinance clearly, but I do applaud what has happened to this building
Thank
and
you.
how it's kind of the centerpiece of the Film Row.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I like the mural. I wish that we would see more of the window detail, because I do think this is an interesting building, one of the more interesting buildings, I think, along that street because of the window detail. And I think it makes the building look important. I think when we've gone to this amount of conversation about the aesthetics of this and about the window detail, that it would be best if we saw a diagram, or that staff saw a diagram, just to look at it in its entirety and not try to piecemeal parts of it. But I would be in favor of perhaps some modification of it. The lower window sills are more obscured. I'm less concerned about the upper ones, because you still see the really pretty detail, I think, on those upper windows. And I wouldn't, so I'm less concerned about that. I don't think that Charlie and Joan obscure so much of those windows as does the bottom part, where it just looks like those windows are almost not even there. I like the translucent quality of the paint, in that it's kind of filmy, and it's not opaque, and it doesn't really cover all the bricks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that helps me just with the whole feeling of the mural on that. I wouldn't say redo the whole thing. I think if we could look at some modification, I'd be certainly in favor of that, and I'd be fine if staff would take a look at that and approve it.
I would add that I did contract with a gentleman who was supposed to have it done by now, but all of those window sills, upper and lower, which are the lighter color brick, like the ones around yes, so they're all broken, but they'll be replaced. So when that happens, it'll bring out, obviously, the detail, because it's not going to be painted. It'll be the same color as the rest of those. And he was supposed to have this done already, but not. So I will, but that will help, certainly. And then we can work on taking off the paint, at least on some of those, so you can see the detail and so forth.
Because those are actually like broken in half bricks, those sills are, which means that would be
I got
probably
out of my car and
impossible
looked
to get
at
the
them,
paint
and
off.
they are broken, and they just need to be replaced. But that would even make it more interesting to me, to have the mural and the windows and just the old and the new. I think that would be even better. So I'd love to see that.
Okay.
Do you have a motion, one way or the other?
I've moved to approve the application on the basis that it complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section E of the staff report, with the condition that documentation of paint removal and method of removal is brought to staff for approval.
Do we have a second?
And can I just clarify something? I think, because you said paint removal, but you didn't, I'm assuming we're continuing the discussion of paint removal around, of the brick around the windows.
Correct.
The brick detailing around the windows.
Yep.
That's what you're referring to, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Do we need to restate that, or
And-
is that
and-
clear?
Yeah, just specifically the second floor.
I know, I think that we need to
Or
evaluate
do you
the
want
paint
it-
around all the windows.
Right, I agree.
Okay.
May I ask, I'm sorry, am I allowed to ask anything while you're in the middle of that? If we remove the paint, well, just for consideration, if we remove the paint around the window detail on the second floor and the sills are added to the first floor, that can be one stage that you can then look at it again and say, is this enough detail or not? And then work on the other paint removal for the first floor? Would that, I mean, you still obviously have the right to deny it or say, no, you got to take the rest of it off.
Yeah, I guess my recommendation was that decision would be left up to staff.
Okay.
Okay. And we have a second by Gigi. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is 100 West Reno. Is the applicant present?
Good morning. I'm Tom Anderson with the City Manager's Office for the applicant, and we also have with us Abby Morgan, who is representing the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Okay. Laura?
What we have before you is, you might have read that Chesapeake did some rebranding recently. So because of that, the signs need to get changed on the arena. There are two signs that look like this. The current sign here, this is on the Reno Avenue side, and then there's one like it that's on the south side, which will ultimately be the Oklahoma City Boulevard facade. In addition to also on the corner on the south, the font has changed. So even though this doesn't have the little flame logo, the font has changed, so that has to change as well. A variance is needed for these for a couple of reasons. One is they're very large. Several years ago, DDRC took action on the big ones with the logos, as well as the proposed signs that were going on the roof. And one of your conditions was they had to get a variance. Unfortunately, when it went forward for a variance, the two wall signs were not included when it was submitted, and so the only action taken by Board of Adjustment was on the roof signs. So because of that, we kind of had to come back to you for the change in this. The new sign square footages, as I included, is less than what you're seeing. Normally, as you know, staff does not support sign so far in advance, so much larger than what's allowed. But this is a really unique site, and you've heard me say that before, because it's literally a block. It's one building. There's a lot of activities that go on it, and our current sign regulations don't really address this large of a building with this much activity in it. So it will obviously need variance, and staff has included a recommendation for approval of increasing the maximum allowable sign area, as well as making a recommendation, you'll recommend approval of them to the Board of Adjustment.
Has Laura covered all of your stuff, Tom?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, indeed.
Do we have any questions from the committee? Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C and D of the staff report, with the condition that, A, the applicant obtains a variance from the Board of Adjustment from the maximum allowable sign area regulations.
Do we have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll also move to provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from the maximum allowable sign area regulations.
Do I have a second? That's Nathan. Nathaniel. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for sticking with us. You're the first one. We have no other items for individual consideration. We have a pretty long list of administrative approval reports. Anything stand out? Anybody have any questions about the administrative approvals? Do we have any comments from the planning department? How many applications do we have for next month?
Potentially 6, potentially at the moment, but there's a couple that they've got to get seen.
Okay.
And I have a question. It's been suggested that the committees for election of officers, and your election of officers isn't until May, I think, but that one idea for, like now, we get to the meeting and everybody debates on who they're going to nominate and who's not going to show up, so they won't be nominated. But we always encourage people to, the chair and vice chair should rotate for very many reasons. It's been suggested that we could formalize that in the bylaws. For example, like in the next election, the vice chair would automatically move up to chair, and somebody new would be elected vice chair.
That's not going to be possible in this.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, for example. But in 2018, then the vice chair would move to chair, and there would be an election for a new vice chair. My question is, I know what Betsy's referencing is that she and Gigi's terms are expiring in May, so they likely wouldn't be involved in that transition. But conceptually, is that a process the committee would be interested in and would be interested in formalizing in terms of the bylaws, even if it doesn't quite work for this May? And the answer can be no. I think
it totally depends on who's available, what kind of experience they have, and stuff like that. So
correct that. Yes, that process assumes there's broad qualifications,
and that people are willing to do that have the experience.
But we also encourage, because it does happen where the chair and neither the chair nor vice chair are at meetings. I don't remember if it's happened at this committee, but it does happen on other committees where committee and vice chair are not, so everybody needs to be prepared on some level to step in and chair the meeting.
I think we did that for it as well.
Okay.
I think we canceled one meeting in all these years that Betsy and I've been on this because we didn't have a chair or vice chair. And we also did not have, I think we also did not have a quorum. So I think in all these years, I think we've canceled one meeting and postponed the cases to the next. And so I don't know that happens very often. I can see the merits of what you're talking about, but it seems premature to do that for this year when it really would not take effect until next year. Is that?
Well, I am concerned about formalizing it. I think there might be a kind of an informal understanding that might be a good process, but
I agree.
okay. Anything else? Any comments from the committee members? Our next meeting is Thursday, March 16th, and we are adjourned. Thank you.